The walls around Donald Trump are really coming crumbling down right now with this whole Epstein story. People who would normally defend him, people who endorsed him before the 2024 election and are friends of Donald Trump, are now turning on him. And that includes Joe Rogan, who in a recent podcast episode asked in front of his audience of millions, what is Donald Trump doing? Why is he hiding these documents? Why is his administration blocking the American people from seeing them? And that's just the beginning. Joe Rogan is not the only podcast bro who has turned on Donald Trump. So I want to show you this clip of him in a recent podcast episode. But before I do that, I do want to point out that it's not like Republicans haven't had the opportunity to release these files. They have. Just yesterday, 211 House Republicans voted to block the Epstein file release. According to the New Republic, House Republicans on Tuesday blocked a Democratic attempt to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files with zero, nada, none, zero Republicans supporting the measure. The final vote was 211 to 210. Democrats tried to force a vote on releasing the files after Republicans struck down an amendment in the House Rules Committee on Monday evening. The procedural maneuver, which would have triggered a vote on the amendment requiring Donald Trump's DOJ to release the files, was rejected yet again, with all 211 opposing votes coming from Republicans. 9 abstained from the vote. So think about that. They had two different opportunities to engage in transparency and release these documents. They didn't take either opportunity. They continued to block the documents from the American people. And that brings us to Joe Rogan, who is also incredibly frustrated with Donald Trump hiding these documents from the American people. So let's dive into this clip and see what he had to say on the matter.
Videotape, and all of a sudden they don't. You know, you have the director of the FBI on the show saying there's no if there was, nothing you're looking for is on those tapes. Like, what? Why did they say there was thousands of hours of tapes of people doing horrible shit? Why did they say that?
Right.
Didn't Pam Bondi say that?
What, are you talking about Epstein or Diddy?
Yeah, Epstein.
Epstein. Yeah, she said it literally, I think, a week before you had the FBI director sitting here telling you there was nothing, right?
She said something about that there was like thousands of hours of tapes of people doing horrible crimes.
There is. And didn't the FBI dude say that there was nothing?
Cash Patel said there's nothing you're looking for. Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, what am I going to do? I'm going to push back.
Right. No, of course. I understand.
Obviously, he's saying what he has to say.
Right.
Mystery surrounds the Jeffrey Epstein files after Bondi claims tens of thousands of videos. Tens of thousands. Jesus Christ.
I'll tell you what.
Chill. Oh, my God. Was reviewing tens of thousands of videos, the wealthy financier with children or child porn. The comment made to reporters at the White House days after a similar remark to a stranger with a hidden camera raised the stakes for President Donald Trump's administration to prove it has in its possession previously unseen compelling documents, or just bomb Iran and everybody forgets.
Just bomb Iran, yeah.
Everybody forgets about it.
Wow, so Joe Rogan's even arguing that Donald Trump did his whole dance with Iran to get people to stop talking about these documents. And I imagine that Joe Rogan is especially frustrated in this situation because, as he mentioned, he had Cash Patel on his podcast. And when Cash Patel was on his podcast, he said that number one, Epstein took his own life. Number two, there's nothing to see. There's no files, there's no list, things like that. He told Joe Rogan that to his face. And now they're telling us a different story. At first, it was there are no files. And then Donald Trump said, well, we're releasing the files, but the files are written by Democrats like Obama and Biden wrote the files. It's all over the place. Donald Trump is flip-flopping. And people like Joe Rogan, even though they're conservatives, even though they voted for Donald Trump, can even see that. They can see that Donald Trump is playing the MAGA base and, quite frankly, the American people for fools. He's flip-flopping. He's saying that one day the documents exist, the next day that they don't. One day they're releasing them, the next day they're not, and there's nothing to see here, business as usual. And what's interesting is that Joe Rogan, as I mentioned, is not the only podcast bro who had Donald Trump on his show, endorsed him, and voted for him that is now turning on Donald Trump. We saw earlier yesterday, Ro Khanna, Democratic representative, went on the Flagrant podcast hosted by Andrew Schultz. It is a very male-centric podcast. They are very big Trump fans, or at least they supported Donald Trump, but now they're kind of turning on him because they believe he's not doing anything that he promised. But especially on these Epstein files, they're really frustrated. And during Ro Khanna's interview with them, when he made an appearance on their podcast, they spoke about it. So take a look at that clip and just look at how how fascinating it is for these MAGA conservatives who voted for Donald Trump, had him on their show, are now saying something different. Take a look.
Unanimous support in the United States of America for releasing all the information around the Epstein files. I can't fathom. I mean, you brought up an interesting point, which is like, if you're not charging somebody with a crime, releasing their information, there might be some sort of, I don't know if it's a breach in your civil rights. I'm not exactly sure what that would be. Like, if somebody's associated with something, but there isn't an allegation against them, what could that do to them and their life?
Could they argue this sets a dangerous legal precedent and try to hide behind that?
Yeah, that is, I think, what they will argue. You know, they'll say, look, there are hundreds and thousands of people who may have been caught up in an investigation. They may have gotten money from Jeffrey Epstein. They may have run into Jeffrey Epstein at a fundraiser. They may have had an email or a phone call or something fairly innocent. He may have funded a university program. And so now, by putting all this out there, you're potentially harming their reputation. As a general matter, I agree with DOJ policy that you should not, if you're just investigating one individual, leak stuff before you charge them, because the government then would be way too powerful if they could just do that for folks before they charge them. But in this case, where you have got the entire country outraged at a government that may be protecting the rich and the powerful, where you have got national security implications, where people are asking, whose side are you on? I think the president should say, I am making an exception because of all the stakes. We're going to release all the information. We're going to exempt the personal information of the victims. And I trust the American people to decide that we're just going to get it out there. And I think people are fair enough. They're not going to be like, okay, you showed up to some fundraiser with Jeffrey Epstein and that means you're a pedophile. I think people are capable of taking this information and making a reasonable conclusion.
Support.
And I love that Ro Khanna went on this conservative-leaning podcast, and these guys have been hammering Donald Trump the entire week. This is just the tip of the iceberg with them kind of flipping on Donald Trump. This is Ro Khanna going on, making the case as to why the files should be released, and they're obviously frustrated. They're asking the question like, hey, why hasn't this happened yet? And is there like a legal issue with what's taking place? But in previous episodes, they've been very frustrated. I mean, specifically, Andrew Schultz said, this is not what I voted for. I would argue it's exactly what he voted for, but we take the wins where we can get them, right? So you have Joe Rogan, you have these guys, you have other MAGA podcast hosts who are saying, man, this is just frustrating. What is Donald Trump doing? Why is he not releasing these documents? And I imagine that this phenomenon we're seeing right now of people who thought that Donald Trump was honest for some reason, these podcast hosts with huge influence, might be flipping on him relatively soon, and more might be jumping ship. So anyway, I will leave the video there. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. Make sure to subscribe to the channel down below. It goes an incredibly long way. Drop a like on the video, comment. Let me know what you think about this story. And as I always say, I greatly appreciate you, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.